afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Unlocking AV with Mike T. Of course, that Mike T is Mike Sinberg, our president and CEO of KeyDigital Systems. We have some very, very special guests with us today. We've got Kirsten Nelson. Kirsten is a writer, podcast host, and content strategist, but she has been in our industry for many years, started when she was 2, spent 19 years at System Contractor News, 16 of those as editor, and just very refreshing face to have in the AV industry. And not so much over here is Frank Wells. No, Frank's a good friend of ours. Frank he's senior account executive at Clyne Media, and but Frank has also spent many years as editor of Pro Sound News, and then we have a very, very special guest, our integrator. You may have seen him before on some of our other broadcasts, Butch Thomas with Virtuous Systems. He is a big KeyDigital integrator, and we're excited to have him on with us today. We have a very exciting topic. I am your host, DeWayne Rains. I'm Vice President of Sales at KeyDigital, and I'm excited. I'm probably going to do more listening now with some of this than talking, but I'll chime in on occasion. But our topic today is Your Table is Ready. Restaurants and bars reopening and retooling. As you know, a lot of the country has opened up pretty wide. Restaurants are booming back. That's why we wanted to have Butch feet on the ground as an eyewitness to that and just discuss what's going on. And with that, Mike, I'm going to let you kind of kick off with your thoughts with Your Table is Ready about restaurants and bars getting back open, back to business, as we've been talking about a lot at KeyDigital. So, Mike, take it away.
Thank you, DeWayne. Really nice to have all of you guys. I think we have these periodic discussions that they often go really well, and we discuss relevant topics. It's a loose format. We should talk on anything we think about. I think the last time we talked about the conference rooms and the way they have to function in a hybrid world when people are in office and out of office. And today we want to talk about reopening of the bars and restaurant business. And all of us are customers, and all of us are really eager to go back to bars and restaurants that are eating out of Grubhub and the Uber and all other deliveries and cook ourselves. The ones like DeWayne who are really good cooks, that's not a problem. But for others like me, it's a real problem. So I want to get a restaurant as soon as possible. And we are looking into what changed and what happened during pandemic. Do the food got better or it got worse? What about AV? What's happening with AV? Is it something special that happened during that time? We'd like to hear from what you hear from the field, and we're interacting with the end users. And as a manufacturer, we would like to adapt to it and to make the experience of the people inside the restaurants better and more higher quality. So I'm here now in a hotel, so I'm sorry if something sometimes interrupts, but I'm traveling upstate in Binghamton, New York, and that's why I'm right now. So, Butch, maybe we'll start with you. What do you see happening? You recently, I thought you did a job recently in wrestling.
I must say that the pandemic is not anything that anyone could have really truly prepared for. It was something that somewhat out of a movie, out of a book. Yet when you're living it and understanding it, you really learn to appreciate the very, very small things, and including hospitality and restaurants. Just being able to go outside and go to your favorite restaurant and go and eat and watch a show or get your favorite buffalo wings. And then, of course, living through the pandemic, understanding that some of these bars and restaurants didn't make it. So they're closed now and they're not going to come back. But outside of that, there's a lot of twists and turns that we can go into. But as of right as this moment today, New York is booming. everything is that did manage to survive, that was managed properly, is open, and people are in there, no masks, some people with masks, some people without. However, the fact is they're in there, they're eating again, they're drinking again, they're watching televisions, and just going back to the small things, the little things that we take for that we used to take for granted, especially in restaurant, bars, hotels, lounges, is infrastructure. Meaning, how simple is it for you to just change a channel on one TV and not change the channel on 30 other televisions because you're pointing a remote at a cable box that has 10 cable boxes attached to it. And this is just an infrastructure thing. And these are the things that I have to deal with on a daily basis and on many, many, many locations. And one of the solutions that I always push for is AV over IP. And that's because you could just do everything with the swipe of an iPad and or iPhone, and it works. And everything KeyDigital, AV over IP, I stand on. I know it works. It's the best thing that anybody could absolutely use, hands down. The thing is, it's a little difficult for people to grasp because all they want to do is change the channel on television. They don't know the differences between sending a signal over here, sending a signal over there. Most people have a cable box sitting behind a TV, or they have it sitting in a rack somewhere. But just to get back to the pandemic, it was an eye opener. It really made the hustler out of everyone who was a hustler come out. It really showed you that you have to show up to work, even if there isn't any work. And at one point there wasn't for a lot of people, but with me, I kept on working throughout the entire pandemic. And it was because restaurants and bars, they needed their things to work and or continue to work or be upgraded and or serviced. And I did that. And throughout the pandemic, I must say it was so eye-opening to a point where I don't think I ever want to stop working in this industry. This is I wake up every day loving what I do. And the fact is, when you have that type of passion and reliability in the stuff that you do, and people actually really rely on me infrastructure-wise, not only for the display systems, wiring for the point of sale, the Wi-Fi for the customers that got to reach 75 feet out into the field, or they need a surveillance camera to watch the inventory of the liquor and or the bar in the front. So there's so many things that come and sit on my plate, and I make it work every time. And that's something that I love standing on. That's why when I always go back to KeyDigital, when it comes down to their components, there's nothing better. And I'm out there and I'm looking for it. And if it's something better, then I'm going to say, Mike, this product here says they think they're better than you. We got to make sure that they know the difference.
I appreciate that. But let me ask you some questions. For example, I noticed on the streets of New York that people more use now FaceTime and video conferencing than before. Maybe because the Zoom has now become, like we are here, become such an everyday tool. I think, for example, I got a couple of calls today from people that I've never used FaceTime with, and they insisted upfront on FaceTime. So it seems to be that has become sort of middle of the road experience using video conferencing. Do you see that same thing happening in a restaurant? For example, we notice this in the conference rooms when people get together, they still have somebody on Zoom in addition to people who are in a room. So that's sort of a hybrid. Do you think same thing happen in restaurants? Like people go there and having dinner, but still Zooming or FaceTiming somebody?
I think the convenience of it is always there. There's really no excuse for you not to be able to make a meeting, especially if you have the convenience of just going to your computer and relaying the information in email and or the same thing. But I think that the people, actually I know that the people that really want to get out, that really are done with COVID, whether they're vaccinated, which I hope they are, and want to go out and have a good time, then they will. But when it comes down to, like, even when New York was trying to manage, because I really firmly believe that New York City had no idea how to rebound and or deal with this type of issue or pandemic, should we say, whereas they just allowed people to build these shanty boxes slash restaurants on the street where people are freezing cold in the winter, yet it just, to me, it was just mind boggling. And you have these restaurant owners that are really trying to, no, go ahead. I'm listening.
It's interesting because I told DeWayne about these shanty boxes on the streets. It's a two-way thing. For example, used to be only in Paris or European cities that there's a big presence on the streets, right? For restaurants serving coffee. In New York, it was like very seldom. But right now you can see it everywhere, which is nice, but they look terrible. You know, the experience is nice, but the way they construct it, sometimes they use, maybe they don't use a New York City, good quality integrators like you. Maybe they're using a really, some shanty contractors to do those things, but they look ridiculous. They look awful.
Do. I agree. And the thing is, that's what I'm saying. And it's unfortunate. The idea was kind of there. However, they just threw something in a box, shook it, and just handed it out there. And just knowing how things in infrastructure are supposed to go, that is not one of them. Hold on 1 second.
Yep.
Actually, in the third wave of it now, though, there's a lot of people that have renovated those outdoor parklets like 3 times now, and now they're actually putting design work into it because they want to keep it for long term, and so they are starting to look a little better.
Well, that's the thing. Like some of them have put some effort and some money into those type of things, but they're not. You don't take up New York City parking spaces to put a box on the street for people to eat. People need to park. The best thing to do is, and we'll get off this topic, but the best thing to do is just to put it on the sidewalk and just build it out that way. Do not put it on the street where buses are and you got to get snow removal. And this is so many different factors that they just didn't think about. And it's a little difficult to put TVs out there too. But luckily, I was able to do that on a couple of my installations, and they're all KeyDigital, FYI. The 222 extenders. I was able to send out about 12 televisions on the middle of the street. And one of the restaurants is called the Ainsworth. Very, very popular restaurant. There's a couple, I think there's one in Nashville. As a matter of fact, I don't know. There's a bunch out throughout the country. And people go there to watch sports and eat food in front of a TV. That's it.
Yeah. Butch, one of the things I want to go back to what you talked about earlier about, a lot of the restaurants with the tuner on the back of every TV, and with the way the market is now, these restaurants have to step up their game to keep the business and get it in there. So leaning over a booth to get to a box with a remote, that's just not going to cut it. People aren't going to come back to that restaurant. So that's why AV over IP is so important. I would like to bring in Frank and Kirsten on, some more on this. Do you guys have any thoughts on what you've seen? Now, Frank, you're based in Nashville, and Kirsten, of course, you're in New York. So, and I spent 21 years in Nashville. So Frank and I are from Nashville. Let's just say that. And obviously Tennessee was one of the early opening states. Mm-hmm. And I can attest that Nashville had a lot of open air seating because, of course, we're a little bit warmer climate, And how's it opening though? I've been gone for about a year from Nashville. So Frank, how's it looking down there?
It's almost back to normal in many ways down here. They even through the worst part of the pandemic, they shut down restaurants and such for a while, and bars, and had earlier closing times and such. Then went to a spaced seating, limited capacity, 25%, then 50%. That sort of thing. They at a bar they would take away the first and second seat would be there, the third and fourth would be gone, the fifth and sixth would be there. So there were pairs of seats and clusters and such that were spaced 6 feet apart. The table usage was far lower, of course, too, and they would just block off and say this table's not available due to pandemic seating. That's actually pretty well gone away. I was actually out of state for the 4th, and came back and was watching the news, and the 4th of July celebration in Nashville, which is just packed with a couple of 100,000 people downtown, was back. I don't think it was to that 200,000 level on the streets, but there were certainly tens of thousands of people on the streets, and mostly some masked, mostly not. And it's really back. I was in Mendocino in California over the 4th weekend as well. And there, everything was being pushed outside. Now, part of that's because they've got a lot of people visiting them over a holiday weekend, and they're going to be outside anyway, but they were really maximizing their space by moving outside. But some spacing is still going on, and there's still some care being taken in California, at least where I was, that's still showing up. But it's getting back towards normal, especially the southern states and such that are seeing earlier reopening and earlier wide open reopening than many other places. How about you, Kirsten? How's the streets of New York to you?
Yeah, I think I've been hearing from everybody all across the country that demand, kind of like Butch was saying, demand is crazy. I mean, people, you cannot get into restaurants now. So it's definitely
Absolutely.
like reservations are triple booked. So I was talking with some AV friends about this, and there's opportunities for using, I always think about, okay, the AV angle, right? But with so many people trying to get into restaurants, waiting to get in, there's all these opportunities for digital signage, not just for menu boards, but even things like, party of two seating, better than shouting over everything else going on the street. Because, this outdoor thing is going to continue. So now it's all about, okay, how do we maximize, how do we make that experience compelling? Because people, they want to be there, but how do we make it engaging? So yeah, I think it's been interesting to see, but yeah, nationwide, from what I've been hearing, it's just busy. Yeah, New York has been really fun watching the creativity, the different phases of the creativity as people figure out what they can do with it. Yeah.
We had one of our integrators was they're putting together a portable 3x3 video wall, to roll out and then roll back in. They don't want to leave it out because they'll get stolen. Everything will get stolen off of. That offers a challenge with AV over IP because so you got a fiber link a switch there that's on the actual cart and et cetera. But the creativity in our industry has always been great, and this offers, as you said, new opportunities to take it inside out.
Well,
DeWayne, are they connecting wireless in that situation then?
No, it's
Okay.
they're actually having to run the fiber link out to it. It's a single cable, and they can hide that pretty easily under a mat. But
I remember that restaurants and bars traditionally, like maybe a few years ago, maybe let's say 5-6 years ago, they were made of traditional HDMI matrix type products. They were 4x4, 8x8, blah blah blah. And I remember that one of the drive towards AV over IP was the flexibility of inputs and outputs that AV over IP offers. You have one switch, 24 port. You can use it. You can use ports as inputs or outputs any way you want. Just attach proper encoders, decoders on each end, and that flexibility, because restaurants is always different. You cannot sort of cookie cut them, even if from the same chain. They have different layouts in different locations. They have different number of TVs they have to light up. So that was always kind of an interest. I think that's how the AV over IP started to roll into the bars and restaurants because of flexibility. And then I remember that, of course, AV over IP was a little bit different. The setting up was not as straightforward as, let's say, HDMI. System. When you just plug in AVRP, you have to set up the IP address. You have to make sure all the IT settings are correct. You have to make correct other IT arrangements. And I think originally AV over, the AV integrators were slightly hesitant towards the sort of the IT world. DeWayne, did this change? Do you think you feel now that they are more relaxed?
Absolutely, it has changed, and as many people who watched our previous broadcast know, I spent 20 plus years as an integrator before coming to KeyDigital a couple of years ago. Obviously, I was like Butch. KeyDigital I was a big proponent, but I even was, a little nervous when AV over IP started coming out, and what really changed for me was when KeyDigital started doing the pre-configuration of the encoders and decoders for the dealers. That took away 99.8% of the fear factor, because then it really was, as long as I gave good information as an integrator to the team at KeyDigital to set it up, it was really plug and play. And the fact that we put the control aspect onto it as well, whether it's our Compass control system or using a third party over our open API, it just makes it so amazingly robust. And now we're adding, Butch, you may not even be aware, we've added, even with our free KD app, the ability to turn major manufacturer displays on, off, volume up and down, etc., over the free app that we have. Now we're working on adding the source control for the major DirecTV, Comcast, Aris boxes, whatever. So that's going to be 90% of what's needed in bars and restaurants with no programming required.
Wow. Now, I wasn't aware of that, and I'm glad that you told me, because now that's an extra selling point. But also, just to jump into what Mike was saying, the AVIP is hardware heavy. So going into that, or the importance of it, because everyone's so used to plugging in the box, plug in the HDMI, plug in the TV, and you're done. This is a little bit more involved, and that's why I say it's hardware heavy, because you have to have the right switch, you have to have the right 922s in place, you have to have the right cables in place in order to get your signal where you need it to be. Otherwise, you're running a coax from a box, 300 feet this way, another one that way. That's all dead. It's over with. So having the right hardware components in the back end with your infrastructure set up right and complete, you have a thin system, very thin. So everything's Ethernet. However, it's just hardware heavy, because you have to have the power of a powerful switch back there pushing that 1080 signal or that 4K signal or whatever it is, 200 feet that way.
But the installation,
it's interesting. It's interesting to look at the evolution actually of connectivity. Frank, maybe you noticed that as well. So we all started with HDMI. Mm-hmm. Then there is a sort of IT incompatible HDBaseT came along, which is essentially 10G-based core made incompatible for IT, but utilizing 10G-based technology to push signals 300 feet. And now we have IT that is, AV over IP is a pure IT. This kind of evolution came through, but I think it's sort of normal because it's end up where it should be. Because IT is commoditized field. It's incredibly developed because of internet and LAN and Ethernet, and it's not expensive and it's tremendously developed. I think it's sort of natural progression. What do you think, Frank?
I agree. And having watched this,
Frank, do you guys hear me?
We can,
yes,
yeah, we can hear you.
You're breaking up a little bit,
your
Mike.
video up, but we can hear you.
Having an audio background, primarily to start, watching audio over IP and folks doing Ethernet-based networking and such with various proprietary protocols and such. It took over the live sound industry like gangbusters, because once people were working in digital consoles, they didn't need to run big analog snakes anymore for the signals. And as soon as they were able to move to an audio over IP infrastructure, setting up for a concert, he said, well, at the end of the day, they're not rolling up miles of arm thick cable to get that back. And I said, so you roll up the Ethernet? He said, no, we just cut it off and leave it and walk away from it because again, it's a commodity pricing. The cable is so inexpensive. Audio and then and video following it, working with a IT infrastructure, had the benefit of, as Mike said, the a very mature computer industry that's going to be pushing the edge all the time and trying to get faster and faster and more bandwidth and more data down the pipe. And as soon as they get to the point to where it can accommodate 128 channels of audio or 10 channels of video and audio along with it, and then adding control into that because it's a flexible protocol that allows you to not have to run separate signals and separate connections for the control aspects of it. It's been a evolution and a revolution in install as well as for following those live sound applications. And now it's becoming so practical with video that it's becoming the de facto standard way of doing things. And again, for those folks that are rolling that display wall out onto the street every night and such, having a readily available cable that's easily terminated and quickly that they can replace if they need to, and not have to worry about protecting an expensive cable, not having to worry about the thickness of it. All of those elements play into making AV now over IP a really attractive solution and a go-to solution. I know, Kirsten, you've seen that too with all of your work on systems. When we started out together in those sister magazines, there wasn't any audio or IT, and later for audio it was just moving files around if it was anything at all. But now it's a completely different world where it's the go-to connection rather than the exception.
Yeah, flexibility. I heard that was a word that people like when we talk about this. I think that's why it started winning the day, right? It was just too easy to be able to get access to everything we needed and be able to switch. And we have even heard just from a training level of not having to train people how to do those crazy matrix switchers. Now they can just go out and, plug stuff in on a familiar interface and a familiar cable. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah,
absolutely.
It was definitely
When you were talking a while ago, Mike, about going back, you didn't go back quite far enough to the component days when we did these 16 by 64 matrices with components and B and C connectors, and it was and all of a sudden you had a green image here and this, and because it was. Butch knows, he's been there.
Yeah, I mean, but that's why when Mike was talking about that, that's why I was like, all right, he skipped a few generations, but it's okay. He can do that. The things with the component.
I can go back to composite too if you want.
Yeah. No, of course you can. But that's the thing. It's interesting how, of course, without the handshake, the security signatures, how component still works to this day. And it's out there and working, and people are just doing their regular 1080 quiet. The thing is, of course, when a cable busts and it turns green, and the screen, they're like, now what are we gonna do? So,
they have to defeat HDCP to push any content through it.
Exactly right. We got to, and that's that part right there. That handshake is what the bar owner has no idea about, doesn't care for it. And all he wants is baseball on his screens. And to bypass the real, the infrastructure of what it takes just to get that signal there the right way, they always want to go with the simplest route. And that's why I feel I've been so successful with pushing KeyDigital, because it's so simple. This is it. Take this box, put it there, take this one, put it there, walk away. That's it.
Yeah. But I'm a little bit, one thing that's I think, if you guys remember, with AV connectivity evolution, every time we have a new format like HDBaseT, HDMI, HDBaseT, there's always integrators come back and say, how do I make this 2,000 meter connection, stuff like that. And it was always a special product that has to do that. You don't really, because HDMI really designed for maybe 6 feet, 9 feet, and then technology pushed it. We can of course have very long cables now because of those demands. And then but for in HDMI, HDBaseT world, in order to push signal far, you have to have a special product, special cable, and it's not sort of straightforward. But I think what's interesting about using IT is IT was there, done that. and it's cheap. They have a way to push data, especially on the low data rates, incredibly long through coaxial or fiber. These products are commodities, and you buy a switch with a SFP slot, and you can put anything in that SFP slot, copper or fiber, and you don't have to have a special product to do that. It's all done. In coaxial, for example, there's coaxial extenders that at low bit rate running, thousands of meters that you can use without any special changes. So I think the integrator are still up for surprise, how beneficial it is actually live in IT world. I think the IT world is so developed, and it's not expensive, that finally we jumped on that. I don't know why we didn't do it before, I'll be honest with you. I don't know why we have to develop HDBaseT as an intermediate format. I don't know why people were so afraid to go to 10GBaseT right from start, like we're doing right now. But I think it's a nirvana for connectivity. I mean, this field is developed, it's inexpensive, it's reliable, it's real time, it's easily controlled, it's integratable with other things. If you have a Wi-Fi in a restaurant, you have to have some kind of IT infrastructure to begin with. So if you extend that infrastructure a little bit more, you can run video on it in addition to IT, and you can use the same pair of hands who installed IT. The guys who know security and IT, like Butch, they can extend it themselves into AV. They don't have to hire different people for different jobs. Behind that, this field is so homogenized that it offers a tremendous benefits. I don't think we're ever going to go back out of IT. I think IT is here to stay for video, audio, now control, and everything else we can think about. And this is just such a natural place since we solved the issue of high quality video connectivity over this, because it was hesitance. 1G switchers were not really a commodity for a long period of time. They became a commodity probably 10 years ago. But even now, DeWayne, we cannot just say, oh, you have 1G switch, it will work. No, it won't. We have to certify it. Out of hundreds and hundreds of brands there, probably 90% never know what it means to have 1G on every port all the time, 24/7. They do actually 100 megabits all the time, but then with 1G, they get totally swamped. And some do faithfully 1G all the time on every port. So, it's still, but we approve 12 SKUs now, DeWayne, for...
no. We've got a lot more. We've got 12 manufacturers with multiple switches that we've approved under each manufacturer. Some only 1 or 2, others, 7 or 8 models. And we're doing that continually as they come out with new models, making sure they still will do everything and won't automatically switch from 1 gig back to 10/100, that kind of thing. That's one of the things we've run into. But yeah, and but more and more, it's becoming where they can handle easily. And it's just a matter of opening up certain things and settings and not relying on the default in a lot of cases.
Right. But a lot of these bars and restaurants, that are opening and are continuing to open, they require the latest tech. And when you present them with something as simple as a switch, as simple as an encoder and a decoder, at first they might not get it until they realize, wait a minute, I can do this TV, that TV, and this TV all through this system right now and eliminate all of these wires and boxes and cables and put it right here on this one nice little shelf. Let's do it. And, just getting back to the whole restaurants opening and the appreciation of being able to go out and eat with your family and friends and going out and just seeing the ball game or whatever it is. There's another spot right next to Yankee Stadium. There's 2 of them. One is called Stan's, another one's called Billy's. And Stan's is very nice restaurant. They got a bar. Everyone's wearing Yankee jerseys. The other one's Billy's. It's like a arena in there. It's huge, 75-foot ceilings, big projectors all over the place. I'm working on them. They got about, I think, without exaggerating, maybe 60 to 75 televisions in there. And guess what? Each one of the televisions has a cable box behind. I know, I almost fell on the floor when I spoke. I said, your cable bill is through the roof. Like, and I know it is. Like, whatever he has, DirecTV has cable, I know for a fact he is. But the thing is, his niche is he's directly across the street from Yankee Stadium. So the people that don't physically go to the game, they walk right across the street to this huge arena where there's 75 televisions playing the game that you don't even have to pay for to get in. So that's something else. I'll talk to you about that, Wayne and Mike, later. But I got to get them and make them a flagship location in New York of KeyDigital components. And that's something like that. But the thing is, a lot of their televisions are old. Some of them are component. So there's a lot of ups and downs and figuring out that I'm gonna have to do, but I'm gonna do it. And but just being in the restaurant hospitality industry, this is something that's not gonna go away. IT is absolutely going to increase. And eventually, just like you were talking about 10100 switches, yes, 10100 was it. That's what was in Best Buy. That's what was in the store. That's what we could get. But now that people are realizing the demand, the higher bit rates, or just a sharper image on your television. Like, I have an OLED here, and my OLED, I can't go back to a regular TV now. And my wife, it's over. Like, it's seriously over. My wife is like, I want an OLED. I don't want a nanocell. I don't want an LCD. I want an OLED. And sure enough, I had to get one. And OLED costs. But then again, the image of the screen, the image is a little bit better too. Hello, Daddy. Come here. Come say hi. Come. This is Arrow. This is my 3-year-old. He's the next integrator. And he's going to be a KeyDigital expert shortly too. Say hello, everyone.
Hi, Arrow.
Go eat.
Maybe he'll design new products. Maybe he will be a designer.
Yeah, we'll get him the KeyDigital app in his hand and let him configure it.
But let's think a little bit. I mean, I want to look a little forward. What can happen? I don't know if maybe I'm wrong, but I'm seeing that people are now having a much more interaction via video conferencing and IT throughout regular lives, and that should be impacting somehow lives outside as well. So, is it DeWayne? Did you ever heard about BYOD used in restaurants? Like, for example, would customer like to project something from their phone for everybody to hear? That could be quite a lot of fun, if you, look what I got, everybody can see it now through BYOD.
No, I've actually had several of our integrators across the country do that in the meeting, when they have the meeting rooms or the dining rooms, special dining rooms that you can have, parties or meetings or whatever. So they're putting it, even with the AV over IP, integrating it together, or just standalone in that room. But since they're already AV over IP in the restaurant, it's just real easy. And then they can take one BYOD or two per se, and can go into each meeting room, and you just pull it up on the screen. That way you're not, you're secure, you're right there. But yes, absolutely. And
so now, just for somebody who never heard about this term before, BYOD is bring your own device, meaning you can bring your iPhone, Android, or MacBook or PC book to your place, open it up, and wirelessly play out. Apple uses word AirPlay, but you can sort of play it on the screen. And by the way, what you mentioned, DeWayne, I remember all Japanese restaurants in Japan have those big rooms. People sit down having a dinner for their family. They're separated from the big hall. And I saw a lot of Japanese restaurants doing here as well.
Yeah, traditionally they've been. Oh, I'm sorry, Butch, but traditionally they've been plugging into the wall, but now with BYOD, any venue, whether it's a wedding venue, whether it's one of these sporting venues that has the birthday party rooms, mom can walk in with her iPad's got her slideshow already done. She doesn't have to now present a DVD. Honestly, even funeral homes, they don't have to have that video already redone in a certain format, which some of these funeral homes actually are still using component. here they put the BYOD in, hook it to the display or the system, and there you go. It is getting widespread more than we even first envisioned it. And so I don't know if Butch has put as many of these in, but down in the southern part of, we have those meeting rooms at the restaurants, Stony River, that we did all of those Stony Rivers. There's 3 meeting rooms that they have the big, and at Christmas time, it's all about the company parties, the Christmas parties and things like that. And everybody wants to show pictures for the year. And now it's so much easier with BYOD 4K.
I definitely need to get my hands on one to test it. I have a funeral home. Actually, I have 3 that I do the servicing for the audio, the microphone, the Zoom. Of course, that was big for funerals, and the display system. So if you're telling me, and I've never jumped into the BY, I've seen it, but I never touched it. So now,
PC, Mac, Android, iOS, and Chrome. I mean, any wireless casting format you want, we've got to
just plug it in and go, and it goes right into HDMI. So I definitely want to do that, because I am doing.
It goes HDMI. You can multi-view 4 sources at the same time, and then if it goes HDMI, you can go into AV over IP. You can make it casting throughout all the facility.
And you can audio de-embed right off the unit. There's a 3.5 millimeter audio de-embed, and it has whiteboard functionality for brainstorming sessions, which you can save as a JPEG right after the meeting, and markup capability.
So definitely, DeWayne, when we get off, when we finish this, that's a totally other animal that we're going to ride, because that is something that you just put a whole concept in my head, and I want to see how to deploy that right away.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, DeWayne. I had a recent experience with my mom, and I wanted to show pictures, and it was just a nightmare there. It's impossible to get in. Nobody knows what the hell is going on. Right. I thought to myself, oh my God, I should have bring all these dongles, lighting to HDMI to make it happen. But this is definitely the case.
Yeah, I had the same thing last year when I lost my mother-in-law, but I had dealt with this funeral home before, so I brought it in 4 different formats. I brought a DVD, I brought it on thumb drive, I brought it as an MP4, as an MOV. I was like, you're going to be able to play one of these formats somehow. And it still took them a while to get it into their system.
So, Frank, how do you see our life changing now?
Our lives are going to get back to something approaching normal, but I think we're not going to change it. It's not going to change dramatically. I just think the technology is going to keep being more enabling. Again, talking about the BYOD uses, which is one of the things that I've been working with you guys on. We've all gone into a meeting room and they say, okay, now it's time for this guy to present. So they roll the cable up and they throw it across the table, and then you go to hook it up to your computer, and you've got the couple of minutes of downtime and transitioning between everyone presenting and those kind of things. So being able to do that all wirelessly, being able to pick up your phone, and you can't see it unless it's in front of me, can you? Pick up your phone and do do just a stream from your phone, from your tablet, those sorts of things, without worrying about dongles, without worrying about cords, is really enabling technology, and that's the technology that gets adopted. Why did the music industry go away from physical media? Because people got used to listening to their music on these things, and they're just so convenient. They've always got it with them. The memory got to the point, and the bandwidth got to the point that you could play your music back from here. And now with streaming and with the wireless technology, it's gotten to the point that you don't even carry, I'm still the Luddite that has 3,000 songs on my iPad, but most people are streaming and working from playlists. They don't have to own the media. The subscription-based things are taking over everywhere, and you can get to the media you want and share it. But sitting in a hotel room, if you've got your iPad and you're in maybe you're in a foreign country, maybe you're just someplace where you don't have access to Netflix or whatever. You pull it up on your iPad, get it to a screen quickly. The technology is getting easier and easier to do that, and now don't have to carry 6 different dongles with me to do that for a meeting type of thing. I just think that's enabling. I think the simplicity of it too, and something I was thinking about, Kirsten, with the in the earlier days of AV, when I was first exposed to that industry, if you wanted to do really sophisticated things, you had to be a programmer. We don't have to mention brands and such, but there were certain premier manufacturers that would have all the infrastructure hardware and such, and you are locked into their hardware and locked into their devices and locked into their authorized integrators and dealers and such, because the system had to be programmed and developed. And it could end up being something fairly simple for an end user to use, and just a touch screen where they select this and that. But getting to that point was a major undertaking. Has it moved away from that as much as I think it has in that world? Moved away from the necessity of programming to the attachment of boxes?
Well, it has, with, as I mentioned earlier to Butch, with our KD app. You can actually, if somebody wants to just go on the App Store and download it onto their iPad, in demo mode, you can see how much of our gear, it's just the GUI's already there. I run demos all day long here with the GUI, which is not even, this is not even Compass. This is everything on the app. And it's all pre-programmed, so there is no program. We can go in and change friendly names, etc. One last thing I want to mention about the BYOD is, you mentioned, you talking about video. The legacy wireless presentation gateway devices have most of them only do up to like 15 frames a second when you're talking about video. Well, that's not fluid video, and we do full 30 frames a second, and that is a wow factor for our device as well. So last plug, I am the sales guy. So, but yeah, absolutely. We're, at least at KeyDigital, we are making it so much more about plug and play and pull up the app, scan, you see it runs, and without all that programming.
Frank, you mentioned that people went from storage media to streaming. I remember a lot of discussion of quality. The people were, the ones that said quality is not good enough, blah, 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 quality on LPs are much better. I don't hear any complaints now. What's going on?
Bandwidth is the biggest thing. There's a few factors to that. I mean, you were involved in DVD early on, and when they're working on the compression protocols, and being able to take even like CD audio down to 1/10 of that, and have acceptable audio, take it to 1/3 of that, and have imperceptibly different audio for most people. Video coming along to that, which was necessary for the DVD's existence. If there hadn't been video compression, lossy compression, being able to throw away some data and still get an acceptable signal, you couldn't have fed a movie. You couldn't fit a movie on a CD anyway.
Remember those laser discs?
Oh yeah. So it had to be, to get it in that same physical format, it had to be something like, it had to be a fairly sophisticated compression algorithm. So if you combine increasing sophistication of compression algorithms with the increased bandwidth of the internet that we're all becoming used to, and now you wouldn't have dreamed of if you had a Wi-Fi network in your home back when we were pushing 10 megabits, you wouldn't have dreamed about thinking about reliably pushing video across it. But now you can have video in 3 places in your home, running simultaneously on your Comcast or whatever your local provider connection is, with acceptable HD quality. So that movement has pushed it away to the point to where the other factor of that is, an MP3, as a lot of people recorded them at 128K or less or whatever, the quality wasn't there. And a lot of people still said, well, I don't care. It's convenient, and the convenience trumped the quality. But I think we've gotten to the point now to where, unless you're just trying to do full pristine 4K for an action movie or something with no latency, but again, the way that but for like just putting a spreadsheet on a screen or something, the technology is screamingly better than it was when we were trying to do that with VGA out of a laptop. Now I could show a spreadsheet acceptably from my as long as you can see it on your screen, you can get it up there. Like with the with your technology, I know you're when you're sharing something like this, the streaming isn't actually running a video. It's taking multiple screenshots. Kirsten and I were talking about this because I thought that was cool technology, and I was telling her about it. That it's actually taking 30 screenshots a second
Per second.
and putting 30 frame video up effectively by using screenshots of the device to send it up there and send it up there in a high res video. And the screens are already in very high res. So the pixel count and such is way up there, and you get really great quality from something that's nothing more than sending 30 screenshots a second over a wireless connection.
Yeah, I remember when we were deciding on compression standard for HDTV, ATSC in late 80s.
Mm-hmm.
We were considering many different standards. Mm-hmm. And the compression technology was very well developed then, but for niche applications. It was a compression for disk, it was a compression for this, it was a compression for that. And one compression format that sort of was working similarly on almost any media was MPEG-2 at that time, MPEG-2. Mm-hmm. And we decided, I was among the group with 3 people who decided to use MPEG-2 now for high definition. For that specific reason, we decided because we felt that television has so many different pictures and will run on so many different media that you have to have a standard that is sort of equal opportunity employer for all of those. It does not pick one. We had standards there and formats that did tremendously better job, but only on specific images and only for specific channel. And that would be terrible because if you have that standard, you would see all of a sudden clear image for 5 seconds, then go back to terrible image for another 5 seconds. That would be unacceptable. So we decided on this sort of equal opportunity standard, MPEG-2, for that reason. And we were thinking to ourselves, the television probably wants to become digital. It would probably run throughout the world on many different things. It will not be limited to, because the standard was for over-the-air broadcasting, we're thinking it will probably run on other things. And this definitely, now, what seems to be happening since then is that television is becoming a sort of major user of data on every data connection service right now, including mobile. It's definitely takes the most of the bandwidth, and it has the most of the use as well. And as a result, what happened in the industry is that compression standards run with it. So right now we have a lot of advancement in compression standards that made the video more and more compressed for lower bandwidth with the same quality, like H.264, MPEG-4, H.265 right now, and even artificial intelligence-based standard that's now in development. So the compression became a central part of any video communication, and IT now offers the carrier for that compression. So we developed the standard for over-the-air broadcast, but what happened in the last 40 years is that compression end up still being used and being improved, but now for any kind of communication channel, wireless or wired, but all running on IT infrastructure. So the IT infrastructure made a standard, free, widely available carrier for compressed based images. for feeding all the humanity. And AV over IP, in a way, is a small offset of that for the AV installations. It's very natural to see that happen. That AV over IP now runs using the same phenomena, using compression, because compression became now low cost and high quality, as well as using IT infrastructure that is low cost and high quality, offers this kind of a thing. So it's a kind of a global phenomena that runs everywhere. So it becomes more and more universal now throughout every means of communication. That compressed business. Well, interesting. It is sort of global observation, but I'm a little diverted from our topic. One thing that I touched on is that compression. Of course, compression means delay. So there is a more compression often means more delay. And for bars and restaurants, Butch, do you ever see that kind of a lip sync or delay? When you use H.265 versus JPEG, you'll have half a second delay versus 30 millisecond delay. Does that ever come as a, did you hear constraints like this?
Usually, when in 99.99% of every restaurant and bar, they're running it through some sort of a mixer, and the mixer is being fed directly from the cable box. And, there isn't any delay from there because it's not really being repeated any other way. And another thing, that's all, I'm just listening to hear you talk about compression and the different signatures and security. And every single one of these restaurants, not one of them is pushing anything above 1080 at all. And I don't think that they are. Like, I don't think that, or even if you were to go out to eat with your family and friends, that you want to sit next to the 4K television only to eat, unless.
So you say 4K food does not taste better with 4K? That's what you're saying?
If I make that a thing, I'm gonna start making that a thing. The food tastes better under a 4K television. You got to eat here for an extra $59.95.
You just told us that your wife doesn't want to talk to you unless she has OLED at 4K.
No, I can't make that up. That I can't make up. That is serious. That is a real thing. And I must say, you can tell a lot about a person about the TV if they have a TV in their living room. The type of TV they have in their living room, you could tell a significant amount about that person. And I've learned that even through some of my clients. Because some of my clients, they make it absolutely sure that they have the latest and the greatest for where they're going to sit to watch TV. And I've built man caves, I've built dens, I've built living rooms, and I do all the technology for it. So when I'm sourcing out my hardware, of course, infrastructure is KeyDigital. That's done. There's no question about that. But TV-wise, between Sony and LG with OLEDs, those things are such a beautiful picture.
So if somebody comes for interview to you, first thing you ask them, what kind of TV you're watching at home, right?
I wouldn't say that. I would just look for it. I'll just try to see.
And if it's visual LED for $200, you ask them not to waste time.
No, I just know that they don't really put too much effort into what they're watching. That's all. But hey, I must say that there are other brands out there that do show a good product. It's just, when you're top of the line, right? You can't put everything next to you. You got to have some sort of exclusion. And that's where OLED is that exclusion. Like KeyDigital, I'm not gonna take a Vanco product and say, here, this is better than KeyDigital. No, it's not. KeyDigital is top of the line. Period.
I don't know. I don't know what way.
Mike, also to fill in on that question you had about the latency or lip sync, especially. Now, in most bar and restaurants, especially if they're de-embedding the audio from our encoders, that's not an issue as far as getting the audio out of sync with the video. And then the latency isn't really an issue because everything is latent at the same rate because you don't have a reference of a live event. Where I really saw it, though, recently was in the Olympic trials on the gymnastics. they were running right in front of that big LED wall. And, Simone Biles is doing a run, and then a half second later, she's on the wall doing, behind her. And that is definitely annoying. I did have it one time with a system where they took a direct TV receiver and did the audio straight out of the receiver, and then the video ran. So the audio obviously wasn't delayed, but I was able within the audio DSP to time align it in that case. But we make that a much easier now because we offer audio de-embedding straight out of the encoder, which keeps it synced up. And we have some adjustment within there to timeline if needed. But yeah, as long as you don't have that live reference, it's really not an issue and bars and restaurants don't, because they're all got the same latency. So they're all hitting the same time.
Well, it's not an issue for broadcasters. The broadcast is 1 to million because they go through very heavy compression, and people in front of the camera are about 2 or 3, 4 seconds before you actually see it. And that's how they do the swear muting, because they can notice the swear being expressed a few seconds before its actual broadcast. So they can mute it during the broadcast.
But we've all really seen that now that they weren't all in the same studio. They were talking to each other. They had to wait.
Right. We saw it. We
experienced it more back in the wars was overseas, but with everybody using Zoom and different things to get in, it's like magnified, and they would just have to wait, or they step on each other so much.
Right. So we need to take this into account now when we make conference rooms, is that when people sit in front of each other, they see we now see each other in non-real time. You see me after maybe half a second, I express myself, but that's not a problem because I see myself in real time. So I'm not annoyed. But if I see myself the way you see myself, I'll be very annoyed because I'll be half a second behind myself. So we now, when we're building conference rooms, we now knowing that using presentation switch in real time for people to talk to each other in real time has to be together in hybrid combination with a Zoom session that for people who are not in real time presence, and it has to be blended. This way it makes the best quality conference for people who mix together in real time, not real time.
Yeah. So Mike, you put me on the spot earlier and asked me about the future, but I know I wanted to ask the same thing to Kirsten because I wanted to hear, because she has her finger on the pulse of a lot of different people, and I know there's technologies and such you can't even talk about to us today, Kirsten. I know you're under non-disclosures and things too, but what can you talk about, and what trends do you see in the AV world for the future, as it applies to bars and restaurants, or as it applies to general trends?
Yeah, I think everything we've been talking about today is all about perception. I mean, that's become the theme, right? We talked a lot about compression and how people perceive the music that they used to stream and used to complain about. And now Apple's trying to push its lossless stuff and nobody cares. It's like perception of that, perception of video quality. We're totally comfortable with 1080. We're totally good, but again, at home, different experience. It's all about perception and expectation and experience, right? These are all the buzzwords we've seen swimming around, but I really feel like all those together will continue to drive what we choose to do next, particularly in bars and restaurants. Now our experience, there's so much we want from like that vibrant human experience. And I think we also still do want to engage with actual media and content. I've seen so many of these bars and restaurants continue to embrace, like, you can watch the game here, you can come here and hang out. And I feel like it's that's going to continue. I think the outdoor thing is going to continue. Like Mike was saying, Paris already had it figured out. Montreal has had it figured out forever. Outdoor dining is actually kind of fun all year round. So I think that people will just get more and more elaborate with the experience they offer outdoors. They're going to need the extra capacity for a long time. It seems like everyone's over capacity. Cities like Santa Barbara have shut down State Street. That's going to continue. They're going to keep these streets shut down for dining. So I think there's been a lot of permanent change that will probably continue to try to serve the capacity for people who want to be together now. So if they want to be together, let's amplify that experience. Let's make that restaurant, that bar stand out even more with media, which is what we do as an industry, right? So yeah, I think that's what I see ahead. Yeah.
Very valid. Very valid.
Okay, this is a great final word, I guess, for all of us. I don't want to really abuse your time any longer. I really appreciate everybody's contribution. I think we had a very lively discussion, and we're going to have to continue in the same way, DeWayne, and discuss new things.
The bar has been raised. The bar has been raised.
I tell you what, when you guys are in New York, lunch is on me anytime. All you gotta do is come, and I guarantee you, any restaurant that I bring you to, it absolutely has some KeyDigital components.
But I'm sure you're not going to bring us to a restaurant which does have OLED TV there.
No, I'm not. Listen, wherever I take you guys, not only is the food going to be great, whatever's going to be on TV is going to be in 1080, and we're not going to care.
All right. I'm certainly joining you, Butch, and all of you guys. Please come to great New York City, and we're going to have a lot of fun.
We will.
Thank you.
I agree with that.
Thank you very much again.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
you.
Awesome, guys.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.